One of the greatest lies ever told about one of history's most powerful commanders. How can a myth survive for 200 years? No matter where you are in the world, when the name Napoleon Bonaparte comes up, one of the first things people think is this: Napoleon was short. Movies, caricatures, books, even in psychology, his name is used. The Napoleon Complex. But what if this was one of the most successful propaganda campaigns in history? In reality, Napoleon's height was quite normal for his time. The late 1790s. France was in complete chaos after the revolution. At that very moment, a young artillery officer born in Corsica stepped onto the stage. His name was Napoleon Bonaparte. His victories during the Italian campaign made him the talk of Europe. Then came the Egyptian campaign, followed by his rise to power in France. Within just a few years, nearly all of Europe found itself living under the shadow of his armies. Austerlitz, Jena, Wagram. Many historians regard these victories as the pinnacle of military genius. Napoleon wasn't just winning battles. He was reshaping the political order of Europe itself. And for exactly that reason, Britain began fighting not only his army, but also his reputation. 1821, St. Helena Island. Napoleon died in exile. After his death, doctors prepared the official autopsy report. His height was recorded as 5 pied 2 pouces. And this is where the great misunderstanding begins, because this measurement belonged to the French system. In the years that followed, the differences between the French and British systems of measurement were misunderstood, reinforcing the false belief. And this was where the major mistake was made. The French pied and the English foot were not the same length. A French pied measured approximately 32.5 centimeters. An English foot measured approximately 30.5 centimeters. When this small difference was mistranslated, Napoleon's height was calculated as roughly 157 centimeters. However, when the French measurement system is converted correctly, his actual height turns out to have been approximately 1.68 meters. Just a difference of a few centimeters. Yet the final error amounted to a full 11 centimeters. And this incorrect information spread throughout Europe through the press. So, was 168 centimeters actually short? By today's standards, perhaps it seems average. But in the year 1800, things were very different. Estimates suggest that the average French man stood around 1.64 to 1.66 meters tall. By the standards of his own era, Napoleon was not short. In fact, he was a few centimeters taller than average. He wasn't exceptionally tall, nor was he unusually short. He was simply average. So why did everyone think he looked short? Because our eyes judge everything through comparison. And the men standing beside Napoleon were not ordinary men. Napoleon's old guard consisted of the most elite soldiers in his army. These men were specifically selected from among the tallest recruits. During ceremonies, military parades, royal visits, Napoleon almost always appeared surrounded by these towering guards. Imagine this. You are 168 centimeters tall. Standing beside you are guards measuring 185 to 190 centimeters. Of course, anyone looking from the outside would perceive you as much shorter than you actually were. The thing that changed wasn't Napoleon. It was perspective. But there was an even more powerful weapon than perspective: the pen. While Britain struggled to defeat Napoleon on the battlefield, it began shrinking him in newspapers. Political cartoonists published new caricatures every week. Most notably, the famous caricaturist James Gillray. Gillray portrayed Napoleon as a tiny little man, lost beneath oversized hats, red-faced with rage, a commander no taller than a child. He even nicknamed him Little Boney. People laughed at these cartoons, but without realizing it, they were becoming part of a propaganda campaign. The easiest way to diminish a leader is to make him physically small. This visual propaganda became so powerful that, according to accounts from the period, Napoleon himself remarked that Gillray's cartoons had done him more damage than entire armies. Years passed. Napoleon died, but the cartoons lived on. New generations saw those drawings. Books repeated the same story. Movies used the same cliché. Even cartoons portrayed Napoleon as a tiny man. Eventually, no one questioned where the idea had come from. Because the more often people hear something, the more likely they are to believe it. Psychologists call this the illusory truth effect. Repeated information becomes more believable, even when it isn't true. That is exactly how the myth of Napoleon's height was created. Today, there's a phrase we hear all the time: the Napoleon Complex. It suggests that short people try to compensate for their height through excessive ambition. However, modern psychology has not strongly confirmed this idea. And the name of this concept probably comes from a man who wasn't actually short. That may be one of history's greatest ironies. Napoleon's military strategies are still taught in military academies today. The civil code he introduced influenced the legal systems of many countries. He carried out countless reforms, from government administration to education. But here's the interesting part. Millions of people know nothing about his military genius. Yet almost everyone believes he was short. Perhaps that is exactly what propaganda is. Not changing the truth, but changing what people remember. Microhistory reminds us that sometimes it isn't massive wars that change the world, but tiny details, a unit of measurement, a calculation error of just a few centimeters, a handful of caricatures, and years of repeated propaganda. All of that was enough to keep a false image of one of history's greatest commanders alive for more than 2 centuries. Perhaps the hardest fortresses to destroy in history are not the ones built from stone, but the ones built inside people's minds. Because sometimes you don't have to conquer an empire, you only have to reshape a person's memory. Had you also believed, until today, that Napoleon was truly short? Because sometimes the thing that changes history is just a few centimeters. If you like stories where you say, "I've never heard this before," don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. See you in another room of history.